I am Michael Lighten, and this is Atol's Final Redemption. I'll be writing, I wrote a book on it. Didn't think right. Need more coffee. Some hilarity there. I have been reading a chapter out of each of my books. And then I get to the point where I do the Here Teachings for a New World. I do that full book. But the rest of them are the chapters where I just do a chapter from them on the sci-fi side, because if I do it a full book, whole throat will bounce. I won't be able to catch it and be like a bouncing ball. That's just humor also. So we're gonna go to the. If you want any of these books ahead of time, it's Amazon.com. Also, Drafted Digital and Google Play Books. It's on auto narrated. So that way you can get it and you can just compare it to my voice. Of course, it auto narrator will win every time. These are the author notes on Atoll's Final Redemption. Of course, these are fictional accounts of futuristic events. Each timeline is distinct of their standings. I would encourage a gleaming of the back glossary for otherworldly alien OWA expressions and brief history before devouring the whole text and story. Also, I will note there are present places in the future written and for war experiences, and I did not or would ever desire these locations to meet any disastrous fate. I only wrote what I saw the character experience, and the occurrences thereafter continued in the story. Timber of Discoveries made upon men and matter, 1641. But he has redeemed his vices with his virtues. There was ever more to him to be praised than to be pardoned. Prologue. Loveland was born after the great wars that nearly destroyed her people. She was born to love the land, but the land did not love her or its inhabitants in return. Caught in a cycle of violence and horrendous weather patterns, earthquakes and political upheavals, it was a matter of time before the end came. Haddland, formerly farmland, Bruce Land acted as head of farmland, formerly farmer's land, and his wife Pearl acted in a dual capacity to help Bruce. Coon the Fourth was supreme leader and agreed or disagreed with hard choices Bruce or Pearl would rather not make. They also resided in Appleton, which acted as the capital of farmland. These were the three heads of state, remnants of a democracy that dissolved in 2045, almost 23 years after the cataclysmic events nearly obliterated humanity. That's the writings of Haddingland. Rain pounded Haddingland and its surrounding small islands. Haddingland consisted of 164 miles from Stevens Point to Portage, formerly east to west before the cataclysms, now north to south, and the small four islands of St. Anna, Johnsbury, Keel, and Doty, which added 16 extra miles. It was near October 21st when Haddingland, now 57, was notified by Sheila, who had recently turned the same age of ominous weather patterns. Hattie was considered the great leader of Haddieland, thus the name Hattie's Land, abbreviated. For over 20 years, and Sheila was its environmental specialist. They were both pressed for time as it came to evacuations. Sheila admitted there were over 190,000 people on the larger island, and they didn't have a space for them all. Hattie had pink skin and black hair that was raised in a bun over her large ears. She had a pretty face with black prominent eyes and broad eyebrows that arched when she was disturbed. When she shifted forward to listen to Sheila's report, her thin body appeared almost lost in the green and blue robe. Should we begin evacuations? Hattie asked. We have not the underground facilities to hold 190,000 people, Sheila said. We will make it work, Hattie said. As loud sirens began to sound about the region, people became petrified with fear. A male's computer voice generated about the region through speakers that asked people to move underground for shelter. Many ran to their air cars and attempted to leave the region, only to be killed by high winds that smashed their vehicles on rock below. Thousands began to hurry toward underground bunkers built over 10 years ago. But these bunkers were only designed to hold a few thousand individuals, and within minutes, many of them were filled to capacity. Hundreds of people began to run amok to find underground shelter, and as the winds increased, pandemonium reigned. Hattie hurried with blue and silver servant robots to gather clothes together in black bags. Hattie turned to her daughter Loveland, who had just turned 20, and asked her to get her brother Lucius. Lucius Land was 9 years of age and resembled his father, Arvid, more than his mother, Hattie. Arvid had a high forehead and kind gray eyes, and so did his son Lucius. Lucius was brown-skinned with thick lips, and so was Arvid. Will we fly in an Airbus? Lucius asked. I like the Airbuses. Not this time, Love said. Go to your room and get your emergency bag. You know how we practice. Okay, Lucius said as he ran in his black and yellow robe that swayed. Make sure he gets everything, Hattie said to Love, who only nodded and followed her brother. Arvid was 62, but did not show in his features of a brown complexion, gray prominent eyes, and thick lips. He was a human who was able to read emotions and minds, but he knew this was not needed to know people were afraid of the impending weather. He stood under a wooden overhead structure and looked through vinyl eyes as the winds began to strengthen. He felt his two-story wooden house that he used as a private getaway would not last long in these winds. He was right. The wooden house swayed and collapsed just as Arvid hurried to a nearby silver air car with expanded wings. He touched a remote button and stepped in as the door would open. He sat in the quiet for a moment until Adon, his head of security, face appeared on his viphone. Adon himself was 62, but he appeared as a young man with a long face, pink skin, and dark blue eyes that sat under brown brows, which arched when worried as he was now. Are we going to try this or what? Adon asked, irritated. Arvid opened a long electronic blue screen and eyed an energy bar that read 64%. I don't think it will hold, Arvid said. We have to try it in the next 5 minutes or it won't matter, Adon said. Arvid paused in his answer. Let's try it, Arvid said. Arvid was in Oshkosh when he came up with the idea of using boomerang tech, or BT, to hold back a hurricane with 110 miles per hour winds. In the past, BT was only used against energy that was man-made. Hurricane winds were not man-made, Arvid thought. He had reservations it would work, but he was committed to see it through to the end. Arvid pushed the red button that read commit and listened as a tall 10-foot pole began to vibrate green and red. He stood further back as it hummed and vibrated and began to position himself so that his body would not explode as the special shields were activated. Lester and Chester were identical twins who were 24 years of age and the sons of Sheila and Corey Logan. They were not very tall humans and had light brown skin and black eyes and thick eyelids. They purposely wore different colored robes so that others would not confuse them when they stood at an Appleton airport in horrendous rains. Lester's green robe and Chester's yellow robe flapped like flags. These people, despite the dangers, tried to help them set up black lines that held the poles in place. When the pole was 50 feet in the air, it resembled a spider with many odd legs. We'll have to sync the system in order for it to work, Lester said as he took out a long black phone. What is it supposed to do? Chester asked. It's supposed to hold back a hurricane, brother, Lester said. We had better hurry it up, Chester said. Sean and Pear worked furiously to adjust strings and clamps until the pole was raised high. Sean was the son of Silas, and his last communication with his father was 2 hours ago, and the weather looked ominous then. Pear was a thin human with a pale complexion and brown, floppy hair that was usually disheveled. He used black gloves to assist with the straps, but his hands still were in pain from constant pulling. I think the wind just picked up, Pear said. We are almost finished, yelled Sean above the winds. We wouldn't have achieved this much if I would have paired with Lesson, Pear said. Why is that? Sean asked. She is my girlfriend and a major distraction. I'm glad I'm teamed with you, Pear said. Sean smiled even white teeth. He was a tall man with brown skin, dark eyes, and black hair that was cut short, with his black poncho robe it almost completely obscured his worried expression as the winds increased. We're almost ready to sink the system? Sean asked. Sean had been known to be a babbler. He in the past talked until friends walked away or asked him to shorten the story. His feelings were usually bruised, but in his worried state he did not babble, and this concerned Pear. This should work, Pear said as he stood next to Sean, a long black device in his hand. Let's hope so, Sean said. Pear pushed the commit button as the high pole blinked green and red lights. They both stepped back as deep humming noises came from the object. Pear asked people to hurry into a nearby bunker, just in case. Corey Logan of Han was charged with Choice's upbringing when he was only 3 years of age. Choice was a precocious child and highly intelligent. He knew at a young age he was different from the other children because of rumors. He also knew that through some rumors the truth remained. At the age of 8, he went to his father Corey before he became green and asked about these rumors. Am I a Jewish child? Choice asked. Corey was human, but could sense his son's regret in being called a Jewish child. Corey was not comfortable with the word either, and stated this in his book, Corey's Fears. Corey had pink skin, blonde hair, and striking blue eyes. He had a thin body that was almost immersed in the blue robes and black flexies. Sit next to me, Choice, Corey said as he patted the chair. Choice reluctantly sat next to his father. You are becoming to an age of understanding, which means you will be a young man in a few years. There are some things you should know, Corey paused. There are some things I should know about the Jewish children, Choice asked. Like, was I born under special circumstances? Corey was surprised he knew those terms. Who have you been talking to? Corey asked. Bandit, Joyce said. Oh, right, Bandit. Well, your brother Bandit is always kicking the hornet's nest, Corey said uneasily. But he's right, Joyce said. I was born through juice from the rough man. Yes, but your mother was not given the juice. It passed through your father's blood. Your father, Chim, was given the juice to invigorate him, but he overused it. Corey suddenly stood near an open window. Corey stood slowly, sensing his father held back crucial information. He died from it? Joyce asked. Corey slightly turned back as his dazed look from a horrible past began to fade. His body could no longer handle the injections. It was only supposed to be used through dropper, but he drank it like a soda. Corey turned to his son fully. And your blood runs a chemical that enhances your abilities at being human. We don't know what side effects there will be, or if you can do things others cannot. Only time will tell. Choice's body was at Stephen's point, but his mind was far away in the past when he began to notice a long pole that blinked green and red. He opened a long black remote device and touched commit and stepped further back as it began to hum. Bandit the second, his brother, whistled and looked high in the darkened sky. That's our cue to get out the way, Bandit said. Mir and Lesson was in full dude lock while they waited for their pole to blink green and red. Mir was on edge about the entire plan, and it showed on her Asian features and dark skin. Lesson, her sister, could feel her anxiety and wanted her to keep her emotions in check. Can't help how I feel, Lesson said. Lesson, Mir said. You can if you try, Lesson said. Mir glared at her sister with black, intense eyes. Lesson stared with her brown eyes and did not retreat from her stance. We'll be okay, Lesson said. Mr. Arvid knows what he's doing. Mir only nodded quickly and eyed the pole through the rain and strong winds. When it became active, Mir jumped back, startled. I told you it was going to be all right, Lesson said nervously. Misha thought the entire plan was a bunch of stuff, and she said so. But many of her family asked her to give the plan a chance. She also didn't want to pair with John Deed, who stood almost 1 foot taller than her. In the past, they moved in unison as their hands clasped in ecstasy, till they both climaxed together and slept in each other's arms. He was married, and she knew it. She tried to keep clear of his touch as they worked together because of their issues. As they began to tie lines together and to use mental clamps to tighten them, they remained quiet for a time. Many times they almost brushed against each other, but she usually maneuvered away, or he dodged an accidental elbow. As the winds began to increase, they tried to work faster. They walked in wet garments at portage and was glad no one saw them standing in the rain. She felt silly. I bet you this won't work, Misha grumbled. Let's stay positive. Arvid is usually right about these things, he said. When the pole began to generate lights and sounds, she could only stand in amazement. When she tried to use her Vive phone, she had forgotten phones did not work so close to electronic objects. When she touched the commit button on the long black remote, she felt her job was done. Now it's time for us to run before something goes wrong, she said. Daniel Harper and his sister Shante was at a pocket near the shores that pounded from hurricane winds. They were not sure on the storm's name. There was a time he could remember at least 10 hurricane names from years past. With his worries on the possible destruction of Hattieland, he had ignored his basic interests like science and history. Shantae's resemblance to Daniel was uncanny except for her wool dreadlocks and her female features. They appeared almost twins, but he was older by 1 year. With her domineering personality, it was obvious she was in charge despite his 1 year over her. Let's tie these lines, she said as her ropes flapped in the wind. We need to tie this pole down in case the winds tear it to shreds. I don't think that's going to matter when the winds pick up, Daniel said. Brother, she stared at him with pleading eyes. Okay, we must do this right if we are going to do it. The pole must be erected at least 50 feet in the air and tightened by lines. We have our work cut out for us, he said. They tied strong lines to the pole, and as the winds began to cascade around them, it was obvious the lines might not hold. If these lines pop, get out of the way or it will cut you in half, Shante said. Daniel looked at her with terror as he paused in tightening the lines. He had a deeper reason for caring for Hadeland. He really liked love, but his friend Choice courted her from time to time, and this caused Daniel much distress. Even though he was human, he also remembered he was in a world of phases. Humans and harmonic aliens were able to sense emotion from across the room. If any of his old friends picked up on his feelings for love, it could circulate back to Choice. So that love did not pick up on his feelings for her. He had rarely spoke to her face to face, but for a few moments. If he was on the Vive phone, he usually quickly dislodged the device and called back briefly later. He knew it was a matter of time before she sensed something was amiss. After all, she was fuming. That was chapter one on Atol's final redemption. Let me know how you think of that. Like some thumbs up or something, and even some comments on that. Most likely, I'm both like, keep the flubs in there and the little small mistakes in there to give it a look, the air or audience of audio of originality. But then as I go along with it, I might just take some of the flubs out there to make it go a little bit more smoother. So this is you're getting the rough patch of it right now. It's all on Amazon, Drafted Digital, which is connected to Apple Books and Barnes and Noble and Vivilio and a few of those others like that. And now also it's a Google Play Books. On the ebook and plus you have the auto narrated version, which I encourage you to check out. I like to see something on that, what you think that is. On the auto narrated version, the author is allowed to go in there and see what the character would sound like and to place that in there and go through the whole book that way. And I didn't do that for nothing because I want to do that to get it close to the actual spirit of the story. So this is Michael Lighten. I'll see you in the next audio.